G'day guys, so today we are talking about the decline bench press and where do I begin on the reasons why I'm actually not a fan of this exercise. And there's numerous reasons why, so we'll roll through that, but then I will tell you actually how to go about executing this lift in order to get the most out of this exercise. So point number one. When people talk about this lift, they talk about the fact that they're going to work the bottom part of their pecs, right? So the literature shows that if we are activating the bottom head, so we have two heads of the pectoral. We have the sternal head and we also have the clavicular head. The sternal head we activate in just about every flat exercise you could possibly point a stick at. And then by slightly raising on a 45 incline, the literature finds it is the most active. If we go up onto a 45, we activate the clavicular head. Okay, so how the hell did this become a thing? Well, by coming down, by changing the angle by going at deficit, you will find that people argue, oh, it works the bottom part, right? Well, what they're referring to is the potential to have a third insertion of or origination of the pectoral muscle, and that is that it actually inserts or originates at the bottom or the first rib, right? Just a bit, oh, sorry, bottom rib. Bottom rib first? No, first rib's up here. What am I talking about? Bottom rib, right? So they're claiming that we can work that. Well, that's very genetical, so we need to, genetical, don't know if that's a word, very genetic, and that you may or may not have that. But on top of that, whenever we are working that particular portion, the flat bench press is still just as good. Now, let's then talk about range of motions. Right, so with a normal bench press, what we see or what we know is that we're flat and we're coming all the way down and all the way back up, which is why powerlifters create an arch in their back, is to limit the range of motion range of motion when it comes to the lift. So the higher their chest can become, the less the bar has to travel, the greater the weight potentially that they can push, right? Which is why most people are stronger when they do half reps than they are when they do a full range. Okay, so let's think about then, what are we doing? Well, essentially we're putting ourselves in this arched position by creating the deficit. So our arms go from this position here down to this position here, and you can see that the bar will travel a great deal shorter than if I was out here and how far I have to go. Okay, so that's range of motion. Now lastly, whenever I talk about doing any lifts, we create stability as our first point of call. Now we can create stability through our shoulder blades by pinning them back and down, but we can't create any stability through our feet, so that rules out leg drive. So now we're kind of trusting that the bench is stable enough to control us, that we're not going to rock, and that we're not going to also get that thoracic extension to get right back and pull our shoulder blades right back and down because our feet are off the ground. So this is where I have a few issues when it comes to a deficit deficit bench press, right, or a decline bench press. That being said, I suppose one of the perks of, we'll go one more issue, and that is those who potentially suffer a little bit of lightheadedness, that by dropping their head all the way back, all the blood's going to rush to their head, but as they sit up, they're going to lose it all, and then they might feel dizzy, or better yet, that rush of blood to the head might make people feel uncomfortable and ill as well. So that there is why I am not the biggest fan of this particular lift. Let's talk about what potentially could be the benefit of this lift. And yes, a change of stimulation. So the fact that you're slightly changing where that bar path is might be a little point to grow. Because you are limiting the range of motion, there is a fair chance that you might be able to load this up heavier. And therefore you might be able to break a plateau that you might be facing with the normal bench, and that if you start to adjust your central nervous system to this particular lift, that particular load, that when you go back to a flat press and arch your back up nice and high, you might be able to execute that load. However, there is far better ways to go about doing that. So I would suggest that we potentially avoid this lift. However, we're in the decline position and we're talking about this particular lift today. So let's set up for it. Just like we would for every other bench press, we're going to try and find ourselves in thoracic extension. So the first point of call that I would do is look to pin my shoulder blades back and down. Now, because I am in the bench and because I am wedged in at the top there, I could probably use my hands to really pull myself up. And that's another thing too. Gravity is not your friend here because it wants to slide you out of that position. So you really have to activate your lats, which arguably could be then used as a benefit and that teaches people to activate their lats. But hey, look, wait. Who am I? Who knows? So again, we're going to pull our shoulder blades back and down and use our hands to pull ourselves up the bench towards our glutes. We're going to go through the same process with our hands. So we're going to go about, or if you've got the nail, you can go out towards the slits, or you can go thumb and a knuckle, depending on how or what suits you. Now, there's a little grip that I use called a bull grip, right? Normally a lot of people grab the bar and the weight sits like this, okay? And when they are like this, you can see that all the load is pushing down and we are relying heavily on our wrist. What I suggest you do is turn your hand like this, have the bar sit in this position, and then grasp the bar like that, like you're punching the sky. And what that does is it transfers all that load, instead of being so heavily reliant on this joint and being back in, say, let's see if we can do it, in that position there. By simply changing our hand position and switching and grasping like so, you can see how much more upright that my knuckles are, and then as if I'm punching the sky. Okay, so that's our hand position. Our shoulder blades are back and down. We're about a thumb and a knuckle out, or maybe our hands are out, or we're starting our pinky on the slits that are outside nice and wide. Creating a bull grip, so we're having that bar run between our forefinger and our thumb all the way along our palm. And with the bull grip, I actually look to grab my middle finger or my rude finger first, and then I'll look to wedge my my index finger in there after that. We're going to disc rack, shoulder blades back and down, keep those lats on nice and tight, and I'm going to think that this barbell is conjoined at the middle, and I'm looking to pull the barbell apart. So we're going to go grab a hold, index, shoulder blades back and down, and I'm looking to drive my hands out towards my pinkies, okay, out, pull the bar apart, down, and then press, control, press. Now you can see how much lack of range of motion that I have whilst executing this lift. I'm still looking for the high point of my chest, so probably where the bottom of my rib cage is or starts. And we're pulling it out, bottom of the rib cage, press. This will keep a lot of load off my shoulders and traveling through the bottom portion of my pecs. Oh, you can see how red my face is when I do this, and how a lack of stability and a lack of leg drive will occur because my feet are wedged in, obviously, in those hooks. Team, like I said, I'm not the biggest advocate of this particular lift. However, if you like it and you want to do it and it's good fun, the element of fun when it comes to training is as big as a deal as correct nutrition and training principles. I know that's a very, very outlandish call, but look, adherence is the best way to get any gains. So if you come in and you enjoy this lift, go ahead and do it. But me personally, I would avoid this lift. One of the pitfalls that you can find yourself in with this lift is that if you don't pull your shoulder blades back and down, you can end up bunched up and pushing pretty much from your neck. Okay, so make sure that you're pulling your shoulder blades back and down and nailing this lift and doing the fundamentals really well that you possibly can do. Yeah, all right team, so that there is your decline bench press.